Most of you by now know that I work at VIP Mortgage. A lot of you may not know why or how I got there. For us as LOs, we have a lot of options, and for me, VIP Mortgage was the perfect fit, the best place, in my opinion, to work. So if you have any questions about VIP Mortgage as an LO, or if you are a consumer and you're looking for a mortgage, you can reach out to me on social media, or you can reach out to anybody else that you may know at VIP Mortgage. And our website is vipmtginc.com. Welcome, everybody, to the next episode of Real Talk with Ryan Madrid. Thank you to VIP Mortgage again for allowing us to have this podcast in this awesome room. Thank you to my nephew, Trey, over here, who does the podcast engineering, and my sister, Trisha Madrid, who does the podcast production, along with many other things for us over here at VIP Mortgage on the Crawford team. So today we have a special guest. Man, this is going to be a good one. So, before I say your name, I'm going to give a little history behind this situation. So, we got a message via Facebook. We're also still trying to figure out how it actually came through. But an old friend that we never really I knew her sister and brothers, but she was younger than us. She happens to be married to this fine gentleman here who experienced some stuff. If I say stuff, I mean like some pretty incredible things 20 years ago on the 11th, so 9/11. So this 9/11 will be the 20th anniversary for the tragedy, I guess, that happened in New York City. So our guest is Danny Jacobson. He is now a realtor as well with Long Realty over in the West Valley, focusing on what, Peoria, Sun City, Glendale?
Mainly Peoria and North Valley, yeah.
Okay.
Northwest Valley, yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you for coming. This is going to be a good one for, I think, everybody, and we're excited for this, so appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So before we get into, I guess, the story behind, what led you to be in New York when 9/11 happened, let's start a little bit with your background. So you're from Michigan, right?
Michigan, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Midwest boy.
Midwest boy. And it's called Battle Creek.
Battle Creek, Michigan, of all places, home of Kellogg's.
Yep, that's what I was going to get. So, So Danny said if he was still back here in Battle Creek, that he'd be on the Kellogg line.
Yeah, probably in the factory somewhere.
And making pretty good money, according to most of us. But
Sure.
It would have led to an unfulfilled life and probably in the bar.
Right.
Right. So after you left Battle Creek, where did you go? Did you go to college or?
Well, I was, ironically enough, attending Kellogg Community College in Battle Creek at the time, but not really focused in my studies and still working at the same time, and living in my dad's basement, kind of that ho-hum story. But I just couldn't see a future staying there, and so I decided it's time to get serious, and I started applying to colleges. And my grandparents lived in Sun City at the time, and I thought, ASU, U of A, and got a letter back from U of A saying that I was accepted there, and I decided to finish up my education down in Tucson. But before that, got a job in the financial services industry, sort of interning and cold calling for a senior VP there. So, there I was in the financial world, and that was my start in 1996. But, on and off, I was back in the office and then back down in Tucson. So it was an on and off process before I officially went into the training program.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you left, when you got done with U of A, did you go straight to New York, or what did you do?
So I then went into the financial advisor training program at Morgan Stanley, and this was in 2001, obviously, and had to go through a whole 3-month process to pass the Series 7 and get all the rest of my securities licensing.
Brutal test.
Yes, it is. A 938-page book.
Did you pass it your first try?
No.
Okay.
No.
I didn't either. I took it as well. Passing my second try.
Well, the first time I took it as a sales assistant, but when you take it as a financial advisor, you have one shot. Otherwise, you're fired. So yes, I did pass it that time. But then after that, they send you to New York City to train in the World Trade Center, and you get the whole, Wall Street experience down there. So
right.
Yeah.
So were you? Was the Morgan? Was it Morgan Stanley?
Morgan Stanley.
Was it Dean Witter too? Or was it just Morgan?
It
Stanley?
started as Dean Witter, and
Okay.
then it was Morgan Stanley, Dean Witter, and just by the time I went on in 2001, we were just Morgan Stanley.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did Morgan Stanley? So their office was in the Twin Towers, or one of them?
Yes. Yeah. They had several offices there. In fact, they were the largest tenant of the World Trade Centers at the time in 2001. I believe they had some in Tower 1, but most in Tower 2 at the time. And the training class is always dedicated to the South Tower, Tower 2, which is the 61st floor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So how many people were in your training class with you?
At the time, it was the largest class they had ever had. We had almost 300 candidates. Yeah. And the first day they told us, well, of all 300 of you sitting here, be lucky to have 30 of you move on after year 1, and maybe 10 of you after year 2. So
that's inspiring.
Yeah, that was inspiring,
that's
right?
True though, right? That's a brutal. I mean, it's a tough business.
It is. It is. Yeah.
I tried it too. I didn't succeed. I started with
Solomon Smith Barney.
Yeah, but it was Smith Barney.
Right.
It wasn't Solomon Smith Barney.
It's back when those corporations had one name.
Yeah. I was actually there. This is funny that I'm not even funny, but this is crazy. I'm just thinking about this now. But I was in the office when I was the only one in the office on 24th Street in Camelback when the planes were hitting.
Wow.
And so I'm sitting there.
Know that.
I'm sitting there because I was working for. She was a senior VP that came from Merrill Lynch, just moved from New York to Phoenix, and she was in like her late 60s and had a huge book, and all her clients were all New York people because that's where she was from. So I had to get there super early, and she was very like I'd have to print out the Bloomberg reports for her on her desk and highlight everything. So when she walked in the door, she knew exactly what to do.
Right.
But yeah, no, when it was happening, I was like calling at the time, my wife.
I did not know that.
And I was like, oh my God, turn on the news. I was like the only one in the office. I was freaking out.
So you were probably fielding a lot of phone calls at that time when it was going down.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yep. It was a crazy time. Actually, that was the reason why I decided, my son was going to be born in like 3 weeks.
Wow.
And so I was like, Dad, I think I want to go in the pharmaceutical sales business. I swear to God, that's really how it went. Like 2 days afterwards, I called him. I was like, I got to get out of here. I don't want to do this anymore. And it was it was hard anyways. I was super stressed out, but having to get to the office at like 4:30 in the morning every day was not cool. But
sure,
this is about you, not me. So, all right. So you guys are in the, so you're in Tower 1?
Tower 2.
You're in Tower 2.
Tower 2. Yeah.
Okay. So walk us through that day for you.
Well, I got to kind of go back 2 days when I first arrived on the 9th. It's weird. I was newly married at the time, and I would say not even 10 months. And there I was going off through Sky Harbor Airport. My wife walked me to the gate. Back then you could do that. And she told me not to get on the plane. And, I just thought, hey, look, we've been through this 1,000 times. I'll be back in 3.5 weeks. I've got a cell phone. I'll call you every day, throughout the day, whenever I can. She says, no, don't get on the plane. I just feel like something bad's going to happen. I don't know why she said it. In hindsight, we don't have the crystal ball, but, that's something to behold, to now go back and think about that. But then, like I said, first day was when they were giving us all hope that most of us wouldn't be around in 2 years and, in the industry anyway. But that morning, that particular morning, we were just getting into our first session, and they were handing out traveler's checks for the rest of your time here, and it's $500 they give you, which is, that's generous, but for 3.5 weeks in New York City, you could blow through that in one night if you're not careful.
Right.
So we made it to our first break, and everyone takes their bathroom break, makes their phone calls, goes out to the cafeteria, kitchen area to get a refreshment. Well, I went to the restroom, and I noticed after about 5 minutes that I was all alone. And the day before, I was waiting in a long line, and it took me 10 minutes to even get into the restroom. So I just thought it was kind of weird, and I took my time and washed my hands, checked my hair, and I get out, and I open the doors, and up above, I see like this trail of smoke just moving at a really fast pace. And I looked to the side, which was, to my left side, and there was an emergency exit maybe about 20 feet away. And there was one of our proctors saying, "Let's go, we've been hit." And I just, went into the emergency stairwell. I could still see a few of, our classmates running down the hall. But mainly, it was just me and a couple of people left on the floor. So we get into the emergency.
Sorry, you didn't hear it?
No,
anything, huh?
No, didn't
That's
hear
crazy.
anything. So I'm in Tower 2, inside the inner sanctum of the building, in a bathroom. So it's pretty insulated.
Right.
And Tower 1 had already been hit.
Right.
So
Okay.
apparently what had happened is it blew out windows in the south tower, some of which were on our floor, enough to, the smoke was starting to travel into Tower 2. And so as we get in, I start to, hear what people are saying above me. They say, "Did you see what happened in Tower 1? And a lot of people are like, "No, what happened?" It was a huge explosion. Someone said, "Tower 1 just exploded." Someone said, "I think a plane just ran into Tower 1, And I had heard stories about, little Cessnas or little planes, sometimes running into buildings. And I thought, well, this is, just a freak accident of some kind.
Yeah.
And so from floor 61, we start sort of counting down. And I know we made it to floor 53 because there's huge placards, above every door as you make it down. And we made it to floor 53, and someone had opened the door just, a couple seconds before I had made it down there. And so we got out, got a breather because it was really packed tight in the stairwell. Sometimes we were 2 and 3 across, just shoulder to shoulder and doing our best to go down the stairs. Well, I grabbed a house phone on floor 53, and it was just this buzz. It was dead. There was no signal. And down another hallway on floor 53, we saw an elevator. So a lot of us tried to get on that elevator. Well, the doors would close, and then they would open. And we hit the button again. The doors would close, and then they would open. Well, the way the World Trade Centers are designed, there's like elevator banks, so you have to make it down to a certain floor to get your next ride up. So it was about 40 floors, another 40 floors, and up to 110 stories. So we decided the elevator was disabled, so we figured let's just get back into the stairwell. It's the best we can do is just try and get out of here. We don't know what's going on. So we get back into the stairwell, and there's even more people coming down at this point. And so at that point, again, like I said, we were counting down the floors, and we had made it to, 48, 47, 46, and then 45. And then it was just this loud rumble. And the next thing you know, we were being knocked down off the stairs, off of our feet. Some of us went to our knees, some of us went on our butts. I was hanging onto the side rail. I was on the right side, I know. There was some on the left. But at that point, everyone who was in the middle was just down on the ground. And there were lights with little plastic covers. The plastic covers were falling off the lights in the stairwell. I don't ever remember the lights going out because it still stayed bright enough in the building and or in the stairwell. And at that moment, I started praying because I thought, this is it, because the building started to rock to my left. And when it rocked to the left, it wasn't coming back. It just kept going. It's like being on a cruise ship that you don't think is ever going to correct itself. And here I am in a 110-story building. I'm in about the middle of the building, and it's still going. So I kind of thought in the back of my head the other building fell into our building. But I didn't know what had happened. But at that moment, as I started praying, it was the Lord's Prayer. Remember, it was, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come," and when I got to "thy will be done," I felt as if like these warm, big teddy bear arms were coming over my shoulders and just gripping in my chest and pulling me back and holding on to me. And it was at that moment that I felt this release and this cooling over my body. And the building began to come back to the right. It began to correct itself. And I thought for the split second, I'm like, no, I'm not going to die.
Right.
I think I'm going to be okay. I'm not going to die now.
Were you like a religious guy at that point, or spiritual?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
I'd always been raised in the church.
Okay.
Mom made sure that we were always, going every Sunday, whether we wanted to or not. But I've always had a deep faith.
Okay.
Yeah, and to be at that moment of death, to say I'm going to die,
Right.
and to be at peace with it, and to be praying, and to be sort of falling to your knees, figuratively.
Was your mindset like I'm okay if I die or if I live? I just knew you just felt like I'm okay.
After that moment, yeah.
Okay.
After that moment, it was just like this release. It was this relief, but there's still in the back of your mind,
Oh yeah.
I may not make it out of here.
Right.
But I just felt that relief.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, Lord, you're with me now,
Right.
So at that moment, we just continued to count the floors down. We continued to work together.
Let's go to that real quick because
yeah.
I'm like envisioning that in my head.
Yeah.
Like you're going, well, there's 3 people deep. Sometimes there's 2 people deep. Was there anybody like leading, saying, okay, everybody, like, because you would figure it's just massive commotion in there.
There was, yeah.
Was it just like, okay, you're 3, everybody's taking steps at the same time, or was just people are just pushing, trying to get down, and any organized chaos at all?
It was kind of like traffic on the 101. Yeah,
Okay.
Some people believe that they can go 80 while everyone else is doing 55.
Okay.
And I felt bad because there were some folks who were wheelchair bound who were being carried, and there were some who were, not healthy enough to make it down the stairs, and they just said, I can't do it anymore, and they would just pull over to the side.
Wow.
And you just knew that they were going to stay there.
Yeah.
And,
okay, so you guys were on the 45th, and then you sort of kept going.
Yeah, we kept going, and we kept counting down, and I remember these floors for some reason. I remember every floor as we were counting down, because we got down to floor 24, and everything stopped. It was total traffic jam. We didn't go anywhere, and we stood there for, I'm sure it was probably 5 or 10 minutes, but it seemed like we stood there for an hour.
Right.
Because of what was going on, the chaos. And
do you remember like the anxiety and panic and stuff of everybody else like, freaking out? And, like, was that like just overwhelming at that point?
Yeah, and I don't know if it was to calm myself or the crowd down, but at one point I even said, hey guys, we're all in this together. Let's just keep counting the floors as we go down.
Yeah.
We can only move as fast as the people in front of us. Let's work together. I remember saying that. And then we started moving again after that long wait, and probably got down a few floors after that, and firefighters were beginning to come up. And I remember the face of this one firefighter. He was probably the biggest one of the group, and he had sheer terror and panic in his face, and he was going up, and it's because of what he had already seen. I hadn't seen anything,
right?
But it's because of what he had already seen.
So you guys didn't know that had Tower 1 fallen yet?
No.
Okay.
No. Our building was the last to be hit, but the first to fall. So both buildings were burning at this point, but we make it down to the ground floor, and there are 2-story windows on the ground floor, but they weren't letting us out on the ground floor. All the windows were blown out. It looked like, a New Year's parade with all the paper flying down. You could hear big thuds, like chunks of concrete, possibly bodies.
Right.
But they let us into the underground mall. So there's an underground mall that goes under both buildings. And, there's a support system under both buildings there, and that's also where you can catch the subway. But World Trade Center security, NYPD, NYFD, Port Authority police, they were all down there at that point. And they were, ushering us, keep going that way, keep going that way. I tried to get down to the subway, but there were several police officers down there blocking off the subway because that had been closed. They disabled that. And so we go through the underground mall. Again, chaos. Everyone's just sort of running through the underground mall because it's as wide as any mall. You start running at that point. And we make it to this little tiny stairwell that brings us back up onto the ground level. Well, at that point, I noticed it was all World Trade Center staff, and they were sort of linked arm in arm and just telling us, go get across the street, quick, get across the street. and there were people stopping, taking pictures, looking up, and I just figured, just keep your eyes forward, don't look up. Well, I had to. Right. I did. I looked up, and it looked like both buildings were, what was once straight looked like they were sort of melting inside themselves. Ugh. And you try and rationalize it in your head. You say, well, the sprinklers will put it out, or the firefighters will get up there and they'll put out the fires, and I'll be back up there tomorrow, But they were massive, gaping holes.
Right. What floors? How low did it go? Like what floor to like the 80th floor? Or was it already down to the 60th where you guys were?
Well, Tower 1 being hit first gave Tower 2 a bit of a warning, to get started. Some people still stayed in Tower 2 thinking, that's Tower 1. We'll stay here until they tell us to go down. Well, Morgan Stanley had already had a policy since the bombing in the parking garage that if there were any emergency whatsoever, that all Morgan Stanley employees would evacuate. So I was with a good company that made sure that we were already in that process. But what was your question again?
So Sorry. Like when you said you look back and they look like they were melting inside, when you look back, did you say like, oh my gosh, like it looks like on Tower 1 it's already melting into like the 60th floor, or you know what I mean?
Okay. Well, looking up and now knowing what I know, Tower 1 had been hit in the 90 range of floors, so probably from maybe mid 80s to mid 90s, and so everyone above that had no warning.
Right.
And mainly they all perished. Right. Most of them perished from up above. Most. And in ours, the plane hit, I want to say in the low 80s.
Okay.
So it would have still been well above, our floors. I don't know if I would have done so well from 61, but close enough, for a 767 to be, coming in at 500 miles an hour into a tower like that. So
you turned around, you looked, and you saw it melting.
Yeah. I see the buildings melting, and we make it across the street, and I noticed just several areas where it looks like people have thrown 5-gallon buckets of paint, and there are people throwing newspapers on top of those, big old splotches. Well, it turns out that's what happens to a body from 110 stories. So there were remains and fluids, that I can't really, tell or speak of. But now that I know after the fact, I'm like, oh God, that's what it was. And they were trying to get us in an area where people weren't jumping, or at least people hadn't jumped yet.
Do those sites like haunt you?
No. I haven't been back, and I've always wanted to go back. I'm sure if I made it back to the memorial, it would be an emotional, very emotional time.
So do you ever think about like the paint, but it was actually bodies? Besides when you tell the story, do you ever think about that like at night or anything? We're like, like PTSD?
Only a couple times since then. One was really early afterwards, and I remember being in the shower, just maybe weeks after, and there I was standing in the shower, and I sort of rocked to the left, Oh
yeah.
and then I came back, and then I grabbed the side of the wall, and I said, "Okay, time out. I just gotta take a breather."
Yeah. Right.
But so I make it across. I gotta get back to. So I make it across the street, and I remember hanging a right, and I don't know where I was because again, it's my second day in New York City. I hang a right and duck into a doctor's office, and I asked if I could use my phone. I had my World Trade Center badge on, and I'm sure they knew exactly, hey, we gotta let this guy use the phone. Mm-hmm. So I call my wife, I call the office. I remember my wife just screaming as I answered the phone.
Wow.
And she said, run. She said, run, get out of there. Get out of there. And I didn't even ask her what happened. I just hung up the phone. And I remember like throwing a $10 bill on the desk, like saying, thank you for letting me use the phone. And I just ran. And at that point, no sooner did I get around the corner, I start to feel this rumble under my feet. And it was similar to being in an earthquake. And I've been in San Francisco where that's happened, not the big ones, but enough to know, like, something's happening, something bad is happening. And I never turned around, but I just figured, run. You know, your wife just screamed at you. She said, run, get out of there. And I later caught myself in a National Geographic special running down a street. And then shortly after, that's where the smoke was coming. You know, so I'm so glad I never turned around. There were people actually going the opposite way. So as it's rumbling, they're running towards the buildings. I'm running away. And
the special's showing you running, and then like you like hook a left, and like all of a sudden all this stuff from the building comes through.
I had already made my left, and I was running down that street, and that's when the rumble was happening.
Was that the 9/11 One Day in America Nat Geo?
I think so.
Docuseries? I started watching that last night.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm doing across all the CCV campuses, the church. They're doing a special video on that, but it has that footage in it of me running, you know, down. They don't. It's an abbreviated footage, so if you go on and continue, it pans back, and then you can start to see the billow of smoke coming down the street. Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the biggest memories I think I have of it. It just looks like it's just a huge cloud of just black smoke just like coming
Like
at
chasing at the
people.
people.
Yeah.
So where were you at when that happened? Like so the smoke had come through, were you already in like an area where you were going far enough away?
No, had I not kept running, I would have been trapped.
Yeah.
And I you know, I had a good pace going. I was in much better shape at the time. I was in my mid-20s.
So you're hauling.
And I can say I'm not in my mid-20s anymore now that we're 20 years later.
Right.
But I just kept running. I'm hauling, and then I remember after, I don't know, however many minutes, I looked back. I finally looked back because the rumble had gone away, and the screams had stopped, and then it was crying. Everyone was crying on the street. And I looked back, and there were still two towers there. Only one of them was smoke. So it was the impression of a tower next to a burning tower. So the north tower was still on fire, and it hadn't fallen yet. And I looked back, and I'm like, the building I was in is not there anymore. It's just a pillar. It's just a pillar of smoke right next to Tower 1.
Wow.
And I knew it was Tower 1 because they had the big needle, the big communication needle on Tower 1. So at that point, it began to feel like a very deep, dark sorrow in my heart, and I felt like 100,000 people had just died, just because they told us of how many occupants there could be in a given day in both towers, and I just thought, oh my God, everyone's dead. I was just there. That building's gone. So I continue to make my way through New York City, asking people along the side. I was staying at 34th Avenue in Lexington, was where our hotel was. I said, how do I get to 34th Avenue in Lexington? Cab drivers were helping me out. They're like, I'll take you. Well, the streets were jam-packed, you know. I'm like, no, I just want to walk. I just want to walk. And I was jogging and walking, and then I don't know how long it was afterwards. You know, the official reports can tell you between the towers falling, but people started screaming again. And so the cries went to screams again, and then I looked back, and that's when I saw the needle just start to make its way down. And I started to cry. I couldn't stop. I just cried harder than I ever had before in my life. And I couldn't stop. And I said, God, I don't know what's going on, but I can't fathom this pain right now. I need you. I need your help.
Yeah.
You know, this is impossible for me to bear at this moment. Humanly possible. Yeah, I just can't do it.
Yeah.
And I eventually make it back to my hotel. I made a few phone calls, probably still in great shock. I took off my brand new dress shoes, and I remember they were both filled with blood. I threw them away afterwards, but I didn't feel a thing. And I went to sleep for about the next, 4 to 6 hours, however long it was. I woke up at night, and there I was again. I was still stuck in that reality of what had just happened.
So you went to bed or to sleep before you watched the news, or or any of that?
You just probably just passed out.
I remember turning on the TV and it was ESPN because I had that on in the morning as I was getting ready. And it was ESPN on, and that's all it was showing the towers falling and showing planes going into buildings. And that's when I knew, actually, when I finally got back to the hotel room, however long that was or however long it took me to run and walk back to my hotel. But, yeah, that's when reality hit me, that plane that went in, that everyone saw, was the plane that ran into my building. And so, again, it was beyond emotions for me. Yeah.
Did you, even though you were only there for 2 days, did you like meet a few people that you were kind of hanging out with, that like you were talking to at least?
Mainly then it was just my roommate,
Okay.
and he was from Virginia Beach. I remember that. And he had enough local knowledge of the area. He went missing for a while. We thought he was stuck up in the building, but he called from home like the next day. He didn't call me, but he called Morgan Stanley. They're like, "Oh yeah, so and so made it home." I'm like, "Wow, that guy's luggage is still here."
Wow.
He just hopped on some kind of a train or got on into somebody's car and said, "Get me across the bridge."
Wow.
Yeah. So.
So what was your mindset then, like when you woke back up and you were still like, oh my God, I just went through this stuff? Because you couldn't go home.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
right? So.
No. Yeah. So being from Arizona, you're just trying to find a way at that point. You're like, how do I get home? How are we going to arrange this? You got me here. How are you going to get me out of here? But there was a note waiting for us under our doors, like from the hotel, but it was from Morgan Stanley. And it had all these guidelines of, please, until we know where all of our employees are, please don't contact the press. Please don't do any interviews. And of course, there were people who came right out of the building who were like, "Oh yeah, I'll give you an interview right now." You know?
Right.
But we had directions, and they said, "Look, we're all going to meet tomorrow morning, here." And it was like a neighboring hotel at 8 a.m. And so those of us who were left over, which was most of us, who we all made it out, by the way, if that's a later question. But
It is.
yeah. we all from the 61st floor made it out. We were missing one of our proctors for about a week, though. We couldn't account for him. Not everyone from Morgan Stanley made it out, but our group did. So we met the next morning, and it was all about, how do we get out of here? I would call the airlines every day trying to get a flight. Didn't know that we were going to be grounded for days on end. And so that was Wednesday morning, and by Thursday, like midnight, I find myself in a Greyhound bus station. And there were bomb threats everywhere in the city at that time. Any unattended package, it could be a water bottle, just left, and someone walk away. They were getting the bomb squads out by then. So I find myself at the bus station, and that was delayed quite a bit. But by the time we finally made it out, it was morning on Friday. And I look back as we went across the bridge, and we kind of, I don't know where we were at that point. We made it across one of the bridges, and I look back, and still, Friday, it was like it had just happened. And I remember falling asleep on the bus, and then waking up in Ohio, in Cleveland, Ohio, of all places. And then they said, "Well, we've already missed our connection. All travel's delayed. We just ask that everyone be, as cooperative as we can be." And I'm like, at this point, I don't care.
Right.
I'm just exhausted. And I didn't know, but my wife had already taken off from Phoenix to make her way across the country to come get me. Well, her sister lived in Omaha, so I figured if I can get on a bus and make my way to Omaha, because my bus ticket was to Omaha, then, I'll at least get to her sister's house, and then I'll fly home from Omaha. Well, she had taken off to go meet me. So I find this guy, he owns a head shop in Lincoln, Nebraska, and
Explain to everyone what a head shop is.
head shop. Well, it's where you can get a variety of herbal paraphernalia, stuff
Tools.
like that. Yeah, tools, such. Yeah, and he's all tatted up, and I'm still in my business clothes, and so we're two total opposites. And he notices that I'm on the phone because at this point I'm not going to wait for a delay. They said we're going to wait like 6 hours in Cleveland, and we might catch our connecting bus. And I'm thinking, well, I just want to get home. I want to get out of here. I want to get as far away as I possibly can from this moment. And he notices, that I'm, calling for a rent-a-car, and he's like, hey, where are you going? And I said, I'm going to Omaha. I'm going to at least get to the airport and drop a car off there if I can get a car here. So I got a car. He's like, hey, I need to get to Lincoln. If you can just get me to Omaha, I'll get a friend to come pick me up in Omaha. So here I'm meeting a total stranger in Cleveland, getting a rent-a-car, doing the planes, trains, and automobiles thing to try and get home. And we did it. He said, I'll give you half the money, and two total strangers just going across the country.
Was he wasn't in New York as well, right?
No.
Okay.
No.
He just happened to run into him in Cleveland. Did he know you were? How long did it take before he realized what you just went through?
I didn't even tell him until we got in the car.
Okay.
And so I got to tell him my whole story.
Wow.
As we were in the car.
How many hours is that from Cleveland to Omaha?
It seemed to me like, I don't know, 10, 12 hours it seemed to be. I don't know, maybe it was more like 8, but we just drove. We went through a couple of drive-thrus, and that was it.
I'm surprised you were even able to get a car, which is fantastic.
Yeah. In Cleveland, though, I mean, I figured Cleveland, being far enough away from New York City. So we make it back to Omaha, and I give my sister-in-law a call. And I say, hey, can you come pick me up at the airport? She's like, we're on our way. So she picks me up. We get back to her house, and I'm pulling my suitcases out of the back of her van at the time. And then I look up the street, and there's my wife coming down with my car.
Oh, my God.
She gets there. She gets there, and the news truck is following her. The local news truck from Omaha is following her. And we get there within like 30 seconds of each other.
So when did she find out that you were going to go to her sister's house?
I had already. Well, by then we had talked.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Gotcha.
By then we
Okay.
had talked, but I didn't know that she was going to take off and meet me there. I just said, I'm going to get to your sister's house, and then I'm going to fly home from there because you couldn't get a flight anywhere close to New York City, or out of New York City.
Yeah.
So I figured that's the closest place I know of her that I've been.
Right.
So
the news is following her in.
Yeah. Well, they didn't know it was her, but it was quite a fiasco when I first got there. So
it's because they got wind.
Specifically looking for you? Like, how did they know?
I think so. I think someone from the in-laws had contacted the local news saying, hey, we're going to pick up my brother who was just in the World Trade Center.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how the word spread.
It was your buddy in the car with you.
Yeah, and I'm looking at my sister-in-law, and I'm like, we're not supposed to contact the press yet. We don't know if we've all been accounted for. And I was just trying to be the good guy, you know.
The Boy Scout.
Yeah, the Boy Scout. Yeah, but yeah, that's just the beginning of the story, really. I mean, because we go on to yet another tragedy after that, and I don't know how much you want to go into that, but.
Let's go into a quick. Let's just do a quick, break question.
Yeah.
To kind of mix it up a little bit here before we go into it. Yeah.
Okay. What is your favorite book or movie, or do you have a mentor out there that?
I do have a mentor out there. 2, as a matter of fact. My Uncle David, who is. Not only in faith and philosophy and education in so many different ways, a man who I would love to and continue to try and emulate as much as I can, and a man by the name of Tom Mitchell, who is with Long Realty. He's just newly retired. He's a gentleman that we look up to. He's that inspirational guy. He's the guy who, if you want to, we do have a meeting of the minds, and he gets together and teaches us, the Buffini program through real estate, and so much more about sales and life and education. So,
And how long have you known him?
well, Tom, only a year.
Okay.
Only a year, but he reminds me of my Uncle David.
Okay.
But my Uncle David I call Dad, and he calls me son, and that's how close we are.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is he in Phoenix?
No, he's in North Carolina.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
To make sure he watches this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let's move on to the next part.
Yeah.
So after you guys so you leave Omaha, go back to Phoenix,
We get back to Phoenix. Yeah.
and this isn't the good stuff, but I just have a quick question for you.
Sure.
Did you stay in finance?
I did.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, so I started in '96, kind of off and on. And,
Okay.
And then by 2001, they had finished up our training in San Francisco. So by the end of October, they said, you're going to be going to San Francisco. We've decided where we're going to end the training. You're going to be in San Francisco. It was more of a regional than a national thing. And yeah, I stayed in that business up until about 5 years ago. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Damn. So you committed.
I committed.
You did.
I committed. I stayed, but it just, again, with corporate takeover and big bank takeover, it became an unrecognizable place to me.
Right.
And I wasn't too keen on, where things were going. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
So that was all in Phoenix. So let's lead us into the next part of the story.
Yeah.
This may be a 2-episoder.
No. I'll keep it brief just because this part isn't, an ongoing, but
Yeah.
you go through things like this in life, and you ask God, why me? Why did you spare me? And I've had dark days and I've had bright days, and fast forward 9 years later, we're going through flu season, and my wife, Julie, at the time, she came down with what looked like the flu, developing a temperature, sweating, not feeling so good. I had gone to a dinner, gave her some Tylenol. She says, I'll be fine, you go ahead. And I came back, and she was in full seizure at that time. And we took her to ER, and they ran several tests. They noticed an abnormality in her brain. She had a spot in her brain. And they mentioned several things, but they said, we won't know till we take a biopsy. Well, about a month later, we went in for biopsy, and that night I found out that she was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. So here I was, about 10 years into being married, after having gone through that, and now being told that you're going to lose your wife too. And it was almost at that moment that God said, all right, this is why I spared you. You've got a greater purpose. I need you to take care of her. I need you to help her. I need you to escort her. And we were both very, very religious, very faithful. We still are. I mean, I still am. And it took 20 months and 2 brain surgeries later, but she finally succumbed to her terminal illness, or terminal cancer. And again, faith tested. This was harder. This was harder than seeing, and I hate to say it this way, just because this is more personal to me.
Yeah.
I've seen things that I didn't need to see on 9/11, but it became more personal to me when it was my wife, because it was just us. We didn't have any kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was everything at the time. She was the kid. She was my wife. She was my friend. She was everything. And I remember, I don't know how long it was after she passed, but her brother came to stay with me, and he was a pastor, which helped me. He helped consult me through a lot of things. But he and his wife were at the house, and I begged for them to leave the house one night. And, I thought, now that I'm looking back, I'm like, oh man, they probably thought I was going to take my life at the time, because I was in such deep sorrow. But it wasn't that way. I had to get to a point again to where I had to call on God. I had to drop to my knees and I had to give up. Because I did. I gave up. And I remember dropping to my knees that night after singing to the top of my lungs and crying. And I remember dropping to my knees and saying, God, if you don't take this pain from me tonight, I don't want to wake up tomorrow. That was reaching a hurdle that I couldn't overcome. Yeah. So again, calling on God to help me out. And I remember waking up that next morning, and my brother had come home that night. But I remember waking up that next morning, and it was gone. All the sorrow was gone. And I think it's just a lesson for me, and maybe a lesson to all of us, is that a lot of times we think we know how to control the course of our life, but we don't have any control over that. That's not up to us. But
when did you get to the point though when you're like, even with all the faith, right? You've got all you have tragedy happening and then tragedy happening again, and you're just like, dude, like, when do you go like, well, did you ever go, is God real? Why are you putting all this shit on me?
Right.
Like, this sucks, and I don't think I want to do this.
And a lot of people wondered about that, and even I wondered about that at times. It's just like, am I cursed or am I blessed? And there's two schools of thought in that process. And honestly, if you don't have a relationship with God, if you don't have a relationship with your Creator, if you don't have a relationship with the one who gave you this life, I believe that's where you go. You go down the dark hole. You don't find a way through the valley of the shadow of death. You crawl into that hole and you never make it out. But I feel blessed because here we can go ahead and fast forward again. I am now remarried and I have 2 boys. And I married a woman who said, if you're going to do something meaningful in your life, you're going to tell people your story. And we run a beautiful, wonderful real estate team. She and I do. And we are the 9/11 group. And she says, you are going to make this part of your everyday life. This will be the fiber of what we do, and everyone who works with us will know your story. And that's the blessing. That's the blessing of.
Who's your wife?
My wife is Barbara. Yes.
Barbara.
Yes.
Barbara Haggerty.
Barbara Haggerty. Yes.
Haggerty.
Yes.
Oh boy. Well, that's freaking crazy.
Yeah.
I feel like I want to ask Barbara a question, but so how long have you guys been together, you and Barb?
5 years.
Yeah.
5 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Close to.
And the funny thing is when we met,
Come over here.
Yeah.
Come over here.
Share a microphone.
We knew this was going to happen.
Yeah.
Barbara and I have known each other almost her entire life, so we can share a microphone.
You've known of each other.
How I met Danny, I was in the insurance business, and I sold insurance to his entire office. And his buddy Doug would always say, you have to meet Danny. You've got to meet Danny. And I was like, who is this Danny guy? And, I was going through some different times in my life. And so when I met him, I was like, hey, who do you have for your insurance? Like, that's all I cared about. Because I wanted to be number 1 this week, and I needed, like, one more policy.
One more sale.
One more sale. And so, anyhow, so I kept asking him, and so finally I sold him a policy. And then I was like, hey, you want to go for a beer? And he kept telling me no. And I was like, what the heck? Why did he say
Look
no,
at me.
right? No, I was like, I'm nice. Like, why can't you?
She's off camera. She's a 10, and I'm like a 5. Yeah.
She's pretty hot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyhow, he finally meets me for a beer. We have a quick beer, and then I was like, "Hey, I gotta go." And he's like, well, "Where are you going?" And I was going on a date with somebody.
She went on a. It was.
Did you tell him that?
No, no. This was it was a friend thing, and I'm like taking it as more of a friend.
Right.
You know.
So like we had our beer, and I was like, "Hey, high five! Like, see you later." And he's like, "Do I at least like get a hug?" And we were at Fanoogies, for 83rd. And I was like, "Oh yeah." So I go, "Okay, I'll see you tomorrow." And then we always just kind of gave each other a hard time. And then he had called me one time, and we just kind of got to know each other. And he, told me his story, and I was like, "Wow!" And then. I was a single mom, and he was like, "Oh, I'm a widower, and we have 3 dogs." And I'm like, "Well, I'm a single mom, and I have 2 kids, so like this is never gonna work. Like, ever.
She wasn't into dogs, and I wasn't into kids.
Yeah.
So
and now we have both.
Yeah, and now we have both. So here we are.
So did you? Sorry, I'm gonna keep asking you questions. So when did you leave the insurance business and decide I'm gonna go into the real estate business and join old Danny here?
Last year.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, he was in financials.
Mm-hmm.
I was in insurance.
Well,
and
in 2020,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was just done. I wanted something different. I always wanted, my dad was a mortgage broker. He owned his own company, so he always had tons of real estate friends. And I was like, oh, I want to get into real estate. And I thought, what am I waiting for?
Yeah.
So I said to Danny, let's be a team. You and I will go. He's like, are you serious? Like, work together? I'm like, come on. I'm so much fun. This will be fun. And so we went and we got our license. And
she wanted to go into real estate, but I wasn't necessarily sold on the idea. I just said, look, I'll help you pass, so I'll go to school. And then it passed. But she didn't just yet.
Oh, I'm so mad. He was in the truck. We took it the same day. He's waiting in the truck, and he's like, yeah. And I was like, don't even talk to me. I don't want to look at you.
Yeah.
I was like,
It's my fault.
crying.
Yeah.
It was awful.
Hey, you
Not
got
an
married,
easy
bro.
test.
No.
Well, that's
Yeah.
crazy. So, how did you feel about like when he told you? I mean, I guess he's telling me the story, right? Or he's telling us the story about his ex-wife and stuff. I mean, he's a widower. How did you feel about that? Like we're going into the relationship and him telling the story all the time about because it's part of the story.
Yeah, it's part of his story. It's part of his testimony. And I fell in love with Danny because of his testimony, because I was going through such a hard time in my life, and I'm like, how is this guy who went through 9/11, saw tragedy, then his love of his life, his wife, who he was married to for 10, 11 years, was so sick. Not only, I mean, she didn't pass right away, and she was sick for years, and people would say, you should have seen how Danny took care of Julie, and he took care of her and loved her to the very end. So I was thinking, oh my gosh, if he could love someone so much and be dedicated to just his wife. And I thought, what an amazing person. Like, what an amazing person. And that's how he treats everybody in his life. So to me, I just fell in love with him because I knew in his heart, like, he had the biggest heart, and how close he was, like, in his faith. How he just continued to live and not give up and help other people. So when people are struggling, like, people will call Danny, and he'll just tell them, like, listen, it's going to be okay. And
There is a way out of things, even in the darkest times. And the answer is, there's no way I could have taken care of Julie if God wasn't taking care of me. And he did. He sustained me. He kept me that whole time.
But we do have some funny moments. Like, sometimes we'll be, like, say we're doing yard work or something, and he'll say something crazy to me, and I'll be like, look up at the sky, Julie, like, why'd you have to leave? And it was so funny because yesterday he's doing a big series for CCB, and they needed a picture of Julie because she's part of the story. She's part of our lives forever. It's not her fault that she passed away. And so Brayden, our youngest, who's 10, he sees Danny hand over the picture of Julie and the guy, and he's watching the guy, and the guy takes it, looks at it, and he puts it in the car, and Brayden goes, oh, well, there goes Julie.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we started laughing so hard.
So these little babies, these little babies who I've taken in, and now I'm dad, they have a relationship with a woman they've never met, that she's gone. They call her Angel Jules. Yeah.
Brayden was 2, and Brody was 4 when he came into Danny's life.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So where was the foresight? I hate to do this. Keep doing this. Sorry. So when you're building your business, which I think is super smart, by the way, because this is something that's going to resonate with people. Obviously, it shows like who you are, and that's basically who people want to work with, right? People that they like, know, and trust. And obviously, you're somebody that everybody's going to trust.
I would hope so. Yeah.
I think pretty instantaneously, and not even just the story. I think it's probably just energy, vibe a little bit. So did you ever feel like, okay, well, I want to tell my story. I want to tell my story to CCV. I want to tell my story to people. Do I want to tell my story in business? right?
Mm-hmm.
So did you ever struggle with that thought process of like, I don't know if I really want to do this in business or?
I did because, and I believe that's why I was probably no longer in the financial services industry, because I always hesitated to even go into it unless I was asked.
Yeah.
But now, and now I know, like, God has a purpose for everything. You know, God placed Barb in my life because God wants me to tell this story. He wants me to share my testimony. And I'm always hesitant to do so, but then I meet a woman who says, look, not only are you going to share your testimony, but we're going to base everything we do on your testimony, on your life.
Yeah.
This is powerful. People need to understand. They need to know. They need to know how God's working in your life and how that impacts everything we do. So, you know, you just see how, you know, how dark things were, how dark things could even get further into a darkness. And then now the purpose is there. The purpose is there, and it is. It's like...
It's going to help with the calmness of having a real estate transaction.
Yes.
When everybody else is freaking out, you look at them like,
This is nothing.
seriously?
He is.
It's going to be okay, everybody.
Right.
And then they're going to be like, okay, never mind. Like, because they don't want to go.
Whenever we have a hiccup, she always says, don't worry, Danny will talk to him.
Yeah.
No, we do. So he tends, like, I'm more of the upfront and the marketing. And then I'll always say, and at the end, you know, Danny will take care of you. He makes sure everything runs smooth. So all these people are like freaking out. And then I'll say, Danny, can you just give him a call? And he'll just give him a call. And I think it's his voice. You know, he has his deep voice. And he'll say, listen, I'll be there for you tomorrow. Do you need me to come over?
Yeah.
I'll talk you through the process. And he makes sure that they know everything's going to be okay. And that's what he does.
It's like a servant leader.
You have to be.
Yeah.
You have to be. Yeah.
So where are you guys getting your clients? Like, are you heavily networked just because you've been in the Northwest for a long time? Is it church? Like, since you're doing the marketing, Barb.
For this one, I believe it's because she's just a native, and she's just, you know, like I said, everywhere we go, Barb, you know, it gets old, but it works too. But we stick with our centers of influence. You know, we really do. We've been in the club baseball atmosphere for how many years now? Like 5 or 6 years. But it's funny. It doesn't matter if you know, if you're in a different organization or not. You go in a given weekend and you see 100 people that, you know, you've either played with or played against, but you all become a family. You know,
right.
You're all looking after each other. And then the next thing you know, they're like, hey, what are you doing these days? And, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just let the conversation kind of come to you.
Yeah.
And organically you guys start getting busy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt at all.
Yeah.
Do you guys ever do you go into any of your old financial clients?
No, I don't.
You're like, I'm done with that world. I'm out. I've got it.
Yeah. It was a good walk away. Situation for me. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Trish, you have any more questions? Let everybody kind of soak in on this for a little bit.
Yeah.
You have
everything's
anything?
kind of still steeping in my brain right now.
I think it's awesome. Do you want to touch a little bit about what you're doing at CCV?
Well, what they're doing, they're starting a series on the life of Joseph in the Bible, but it's talking about the walls we face in life, you know, the hurdles we face in life, and we know some folks over in the Surprise campus, one who's a pastor over there, and you know, just sharing that story. They said, look, we need to focus in on, you know, this story, Danny's testimony about facing those walls, you know, and but how God helps us, you know, break through those walls, how he gets us out of that darkness, how we, you know, face those hurdles in life, whether it be, you know, in our family life, our business life, our personal life. You know, it's just it's a kickoff video. I think they told me it's only going to be like about 5 or 6 minutes, but it's very, very impactful because, you know, it's a story that we all know. We all remember where we were that day.
Yep.
But, you know, they're talking about, you know, 9/11, you know, the death of my wife, and then where I am today, and how without God, you know, none of that is possible.
Yeah.
Without God in my life. So, you know, it's something that over this weekend on the 11th and 12th, starting at 4:00, you can go on the CCV website and just see the video. And so it'll be highlighted all weekend this weekend.
We'll link it in the show notes.
Yeah.
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 Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate you coming on and doing this. This was
Thank you
super
for having me.
exciting, and man, this is the second person that's come on and told his testimony. My other friend Shay just like 3 weeks ago did a whole deal. You seen that one?
We have.
Okay,
It was
okay.
great. It was great. And I wish we had more time, because if I were to share like the full,
Yeah.
we could be here all day. We really
well, we
could.
can always have you back.
Yes, you can. I'd love to come back.
Shay's great. I played golf
Yeah.
with Shay yesterday,
Yeah,
actually.
Is he in the real estate business?
Yeah, he's a realtor. He's
That's great.
he's at EXP now, but he was with Russell Lyon Sotheby's for a while. But he's a DC Ranch, Silverleaf area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but yeah, he's a solid human being.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, thank you to Trey, my nephew here doing the podcast engineering over here, or whatever he's doing over there on his
Playing
phone.
with buttons.
Yeah. And then obviously Trisha, thank you so much for setting this up and doing the production and all the social media and all that stuff for this. Again, we are a mortgage company here at VIP Mortgage, and we are the Crawford team. So we do need deals, everybody out there. So if you know anybody that looking to purchase a home or refinance their home, please contact me via social media, or if you have my phone number, you can just call me or text me.
Or agents who are out there looking for partners.
Oh, and LO is looking to come work for us. We never really do this too much. We're not. The podcast is in a real estate mortgage building, and we obviously do this for a living. But this is more about just cool people doing cool things in the community.
Yeah,
And
honestly, I had no idea that you were even in real estate when we were contacted to have you on.
Oh, okay.
So it was sheer coincidence. I mean, I don't know if you knew.
we just
Ryan,
thought this guy
but-
was really nice. I knew.
Oh, you did? I was like, wow, he's like a great guy. And I didn't know he was married to Barb Haggerty.
Yeah.
Like he put me on speaker and Barb piped in.
Yeah.
And I was like, what?
Yeah, I said, just tell her my last name. She's going to know.
Yeah.
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 Did your sister do insurance too?
No, she's in pharmaceuticals.
Pharmaceuticals.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
I used to see her at the Panera all the time.
Oh, yeah.
On 67th Avenue and the 101.
Yep. Yep.
I used to do that world too. All right. So, anyways, back to that. Thank you to VIP Mortgage again for letting us do this here. We need people to come onto our pages, like and subscribe on YouTube, ring the bell for notifications. Real Talk with Ryan Madrid on Instagram, Facebook. Please, we need more followers. We need more people to share this, especially this one. I think this is going to be a really good. It's probably going to be our
Biggest one.
our biggest one, I'm assuming. If it's not, it's their problem. But again, thank you, Danny, so much.
Thank
Thanks,
you for
Barb.
having me. Yeah.
Appreciate it. And thank you to Shayla's family for reaching out and setting this up as well. All right, thanks again. Real Talk is brought to you by Tsunami. We all know that we should be doing more videos than we are doing. And one of the hesitations for myself is that I don't feel like I do a very good job filming them. I get nervous about the way they're going to look. And I am pretty sure that most people feel the same way as I do. So Tsunami is a product that will allow you to film your own videos, and you can send those videos via the app that you can download it on the App Store, and they will make the video look professional because it is done by a professional editing team. So you want a header, you want a footer, you want to just look better in general, and for the cost, it's unbelievably inexpensive. So if you're looking for video help, this is the best way to go about doing it, especially if you want to film videos on your phone like we all should. So it's Tsunami with an X. And if you want to find them online, it's Tsunami with an X.net. XUNAMI.net.
VIP Mortgage Incorporated does business in accordance with the Federal Fair Lending Laws, NMLS ID 145502. For state-specific licensing, please visit www.vipmtginc.com/national-licenses/. VIP is not acting on behalf of or at the direction of the FHA, HUD, or the federal government. VIP is an equal housing lender.